4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run inside the 10. Head first. He dives off the 5-yard line.
65 horsepower trap. It might pop wide open, Rats.
It's in there!
Is that there, Rats? Nice going, baby. Yes, sir, Rats.
High snap. It's no good. The Chargers
Here comes the rush. He sidestep. Can he throw? He can't. The ball flipped forward is loose. A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Casper grabbing the ball. It is ruled a fumble. Casper is recovered in the end zone. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most zany.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live and welcome to the Wild Wild West podcast. I am Richie Riche of the MHRT Network. Over to my right, we have Captain Jack. Captain, how are you doing today? Awesome.
I'm okay, but I'm going to rant after we do all the intros.
Fantastic. I expect nothing less. And Alex, how are you doing today? Thank you for joining us. And if you don't know Alex, Alex can be found over at Arrowhead Addict, articles and other such things, all Kansas City Chiefs related. Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Rich. Thanks for asking. I don't have a rant planned, but ready to run through today's topics with you guys.
On the plus note, you went with the full Andy Reid look minus the hat, so that works.
Yeah. Minus I'm just a little bit of added stomach.
No. You go with the full Andy Reid, you got to have this, baby.
Yeah, there it is.
And Coach, how you doing?
That's a mini read. That's a mini
It's a
read.
mini read.
Coach, how are you?
I'm good. After all that, I'm good. Listen, I can't top that. So I'm just saying, let's talk AFC West.
Ready to rip.
Let's get into it.
Fantastic. So, guys, we have an awesome show planned for you today. We are expecting a guest in the early stages of today's pod, and as you may or may not have seen in the initial tweets that we sent out, we are going to have Jet Central joining us today. For all of you who don't know who Jet Central is, one of the premier New York Jets podcasts. The gentleman that runs that pod and I go back at least a year, almost a year and a half now. Wonderful guy, great content, very, very objective about the New York Jets. You're not going to find you're not going to find a whole lot of kind of everything's going to go swimmingly 100% of the time. However, has great takes and very, very high quality video content. And guys, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring in our guest to go over some of the new and recent news for the New York Jets. Please welcome Ian from Jet Central.
How you guys doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Can you guys hear me and see me okay?
Yeah, you're doing well.
Can't
Perfect.
hear you. No, I'm kidding.
Starting them early.
Yeah, of course he is.
So how are you doing? What's going on with the Jets? I noticed some new news today that you guys signed a new cornerback. I saw that video come out from you in terms of updating the world on the update there and whatnot. And I know the guys in our audience had some Jets specific questions from previous podcasts. And I did mention to them that I'd reach out to you, see if you come on. We can maybe go over some of the recent Jets news and also give a little bit of a preemptive preview of when we hopefully have you back to go over the Broncos-Jets game, which I think this year is going to be a really, really interesting slugfest, I think, between the two teams with all of the changes that both teams have made this year.
Yeah, definitely. It's games in Denver, obviously, and I'm actually thinking about going to it, depending on plane tickets and everything like that. But I mean, I've always wanted to go out to Denver. It's absolutely beautiful, and Denver's like top notch. Russell Wilson, that move speaks for itself. I mean, they're going to be legit this season.
Yeah, I think so. Now you don't play. I checked the preseason schedule and whatnot. The only AFC West team that you guys do play this year, from what I could see, is in fact the Broncos.
Right.
And I was a bit surprised because I thought there may be a preseason game mixed in there with one of the other AFC West teams, and or even a regular season game. But it looks like we play each other probably just based on results of last season, and that's probably how the schedule landed that way.
Yeah, so for the preseason, I know the Jets start off with Philly, and then it's the Atlanta Falcons week 2, and then the New York Giants week 3.
Fantastic. Now, guys, I'm talking to Coach Alex and Captain there. We all had some questions that came up last show. And, Captain, I'm not going to be cruel and ask you to go first because I know you're trying to sneak some chow in there.
Well, this was the prop, but like I said, our guest is here, but we'll talk about it after our guest goes anyway. It's fine.
We all had some questions with regards to, some recent news in the Jets and whatnot that several of the fans of the show were wanting some feedback on. Do you want to throw it over to one of you guys to jump into some of the questions that came in during, I guess it was 2 shows ago now?
I just have one question. Is Zach Wilson the GOAT?
The most pressing one, right?
Has to do nothing to do with quarterback play. I would not talk quarterback play at all. We just want to know: is he the GOAT? Is he he's the 2022?
Man, he's got to be dropping dimes both on and off the field.
Hey, I'm just saying. Is he the GOAT of? Or is he the new Finch of 2022? That's all I want to know from American Pie.
Yeah. So bottom
O'Brien, man.
Yeah, so bottom line, everybody loves him. Jets fans, his friends, coaches, maybe a little bit more, but everybody absolutely loves him. And as far as on the field and stuff, goes, it's everything is trending upwards. Joe Douglas did a great job of just supplying him talent, wide receiver, running back, better offensive line, tight end. You kind of it is an assumption here, but you would think that the defense is going to be better too. They're the worst defense in football in the entire, in the entire NFL. So it's got to go up, and I'm hoping for the best.
Okay.
And I guess from a production standpoint, specifically, just given the fact that he's now cycling into he's still in that really early stage of his career, and really for most quarterbacks, this is that make or break it kind of portion of their career. Specifically tying back into Zach Wilson, do you kind of think that they've done enough to protect him up front to give him that extra little bit of time as he's learning the position and some of the things he may have struggled with in terms of reading the field, which frankly, I'm not even trying to, knock Wilson. Most rookie quarterbacks struggle with that when they come into the NFL.
Right. Yeah, no. So, if I had to, I guess realistically, I think Joe Douglas did enough as general manager, both at free agency and the draft. If I had to split hairs and nitpick, I would personally want one more tackle just to have that veteran third kind of swing tackle. If Mekhi Becton isn't healthy, if he just doesn't look like the same player, if he gets hurt again, George Fenn is a guy who's also missed time. At the tackle position as well. So really those are the only 2 options, and both haven't really, and George Fenn has been reliable and everything like that for the most part, but he has missed some time. So, if something were to happen, I do want to kind of have that insurance policy at tackle. But again, Joe Douglas did so much, upgraded numerous positions of need. I don't want to sit here and rag on him or say, oh, he should have done this, he should have done that.
Okay. All right. Well, I do have one, I guess you could say, resounding question, because I do think the Jets have done a lot to improve their team. But based upon the competition in the division, do you think that the Jets ultimately will finish anywhere but the projection of 4th, even though the team is vastly improved, just based on the level of competition in the division this year?
Yeah, so I think best case scenario, they finish 3rd. I just think it's too good. Buffalo, in my opinion, is the best team in football. Miami did a lot this offseason as well. Tyreek Hill, Taron Armstead. But it is with them having a new head coach coming in the building too, it's like you can't really put your finger on like how they're exactly going to look. But New England, of course, we can never count them out. And then you mix that in with the hard schedule. I think the Jets will be finishing in 4th, best case scenario 3rd.
Yeah, because I really think the wild card is the Patriots. We're not sure exactly what they're going to do, but Bill always has something up his sleeve. I mean, I call him the Sith Lord of the NFL.
Yeah, right.
When it comes to, I call him Evil Bill. So he always has something up his sleeve. But I do like what the Jets have done. I mean, your GM is a rock star. I mean, he's a superstar. He's killed drafts after draft after draft. I mean, he needs to get an award for the level of player talent he's brought in the last 3 years. Again, it's just like I said, it's just bad timing. Like, had this been 2-3 years ago, you guys probably have been looking to compete for the division, but everybody's getting better at the same time. So I think that's the only downfall to it. But I do like this, everything you guys did in the draft. Like, a glaring thing I say that needs some more help is the safety position and then maybe a second corner. But outside of that, you guys definitely look good personnel-wise.
Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. It's kind of funny too because it's like the AFC West, in my opinion, is the best division of football. And then like right behind him in the AFC, it's like I would probably have to. Well, let me scratch that. I guess the North would be better than the East, and then the East is right there as well. But I think the South is probably 4th as far as if you take all the teams.
Guaranteed. Yeah, we can put the South. We all agree on that. Like that's easy. We all agree the South is 4th. Like we can argue who's 2 and 3, but 4 and 4.
They got the Jaguars in there.
Texans. Don't forget the Texans. The Texans are worse than the Jaguars, in my opinion. So definitely agree with that. And Alex, I saw your face too when he said that the Bills were the best team in the league.
Man.
And
I'm pretty sure they lost in the playoffs, but who am I?
Oh, Alex, are you a Chiefs guy? I just saw the logo pop
there
up.
It is.
There you go.
There you go.
I guess I should sit up more.
It's okay. Alex will quickly realize that when you lose, key players and when you pay massive contracts to your quarterback without young guys cycling behind them from the draft, that actually has an impact on your team.
That's what they did this year.
Okay, we'll see.
What are you talking about? Yeah. We'll see when you got to pay Russell Wilson too. You're going to be making the same argument about your own squad.
I might. But for now, I'm not.
So that's for next week's episode. Stay tuned.
I will say resoundingly that it's a good problem to have to pay a quarterback. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, Chargers gonna have to do it too.
Yeah. I mean, we'll just roll out the $45-50 million a year annually. Then we'll get the rest going later.
Yeah, right.
If I can tie into your rankings there, not only just of the various divisions within the AFC, but I actually want to delve into the Jets division. Aside from a few key positions, the challenge may well be, or again, tying into what Coach said, you've had some pretty good drafts. You brought in some really talented guys that have looked pretty good in various positions. What are the biggest leaps that are missing then if you've drafted well, which is really actually a huge hurdle for most teams, if we're going to be collectively honest? What do you need to do to start pushing out teams like the Patriots and then now catching up to the Bills, who have seemingly leapfrogged the Patriots there atop the division?
Yeah, I think Coach just touched on it before. It's just like not enough time. Of course, Joe Douglas has been there for a handful of years, but I mean, he made the great point before. If he was here for like an extended period of time, I feel like the Jets would be a little bit more farther along. You mix that in with, last season starting a brand new rookie quarterback, not a ton of help around him, all the injured players like Becton, Carl Lawson, Marcus May, Corey Davis. Like the Jets had a ton of injured players, and then also a rookie coaching staff as well with Saleh, Mike LaFleur, first time OC, first time developing a rookie quarterback, calling plays. So I think it was just a big combination of just injuries and youth overall on, both on and off the field. So I think really time will tell, but just having like this point right now, like training camp, preseason, just having those reps in practice, having those, joint practice reps, preseason games, I think that's really going to help this team kind of progress throughout the weeks and months.
Okay. Is LaFleur a Shanahan disciple? Do I have that right? Is he part of that Shanahan coaching tree?
Yep. Yeah, he was
part of, man.
Yeah, he was the passing game coordinator for San Francisco, and then when Saleh got hired, he basically offered him the OC job, and he's the little brother to Matt LaFleur.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Okay, I hate him already then.
Oh, gee.
I got a little hypothetical here for you. Well, I'm just more so curious what your thoughts are. So obviously we've kind of talked about, the moves they've been making to, more so this offseason. And you mentioned if the GM was there earlier, maybe they're in a better position. Do you think if going into his rookie year, if Sam Darnold had a lineup like you have right now, he would be, in a different trajectory in terms of his career?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I actually was never like really high on Sam Darnold. Just the turnovers always bothered me, just mechanically and whatnot, just how he would throw the football. And I was never a big Darnold guy, but I do think if he was in this position, he would be much further along. I think it wouldn't have went south so quickly for him in New York, because I mean, you look at the roster right now, it's Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis. All those guys are better than everybody that he had, in his 3-year span with the Jets. And you can make that same argument for, tight ends and running back as well. I think really the only big difference or big advantage that Sam Darnold had was the defense. I mean, the defense was like really good with Todd Bowles, like really good.
Money into it.
Yeah, really good given the circumstances with Todd Bowles and then even Greg Williams as a DC. But I mean, last year it was just a joke.
Except on running a cover 0 against Henry Ruggs. But,
the headhunter.
You're welcome. You're welcome for that.
Well, then they also signed Le'Veon Bell. What'd he do there?
Yeah, right.
Well, I also think that part of the signings and stuff when you bring in free agents is that you also need to know how to use them. And I'm not saying that the coaches don't necessarily know how to use them, but they have to fit the system and the scheme that they're moving to. So if you're signing someone for the name in hopes that they're just that good and that they can kind of overcome a system that they've done well in, that's a mistake I think a lot of teams make.
Yeah.
And actually, I'd almost argue the majority of NFL teams make that mistake at some point.
I'd be curious, like, how many people that sign to a different team with a big contract are successful, like after
that'd be
that.
a great stat. I'd love to know that.
Like I feel like for the most part, it's like paying them money to not be relevant anymore. And especially with running the ball, because there's so many other factors that go into it, like like you said, the scheme, but also like if you're going to a team that has a worse offensive line, you can almost guarantee you're not going to have as many solid opportunities like you did. Like Bell with the Steelers was almost built for that offense. And I didn't know. Obviously it's like his game didn't really equate to any other scheme after that. So I'd be curious as how many don't pan out, because I feel like it's probably a lot.
Or teams are trying to reach for a guy, like I said, based on name because they've seen him do so well in some other team. But I'm actually really looking forward to seeing which direction Zach goes in this year. Because like with so many teams in the NFL, I mean, coming from the Broncos perspective, solidifying the quarterback position is super, super important. And knowing that you have that anchor under center on a go forward is a very, very important thing. And I'm very, very interested to see where Zach goes. And I have a funny feeling you're probably in a similar position where your eyes are probably moving in that direction as well. Would that be fair?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, we could look at the Sam Darnold era, the 3 years that he was there, even before that with guys like Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh McCown. This team has more talent, like offensively, than all of those years. Like in the past, I don't know, a handful of seasons. Like this is the team with the guys that could beat you, over the middle of the field. They can win one-on-one. They don't have to be schemed open. And it's everybody's second year, with the coaching staff as well. So, you would like to think that, with a full year under their belt, Mike LaFleur can maybe game plan a little bit more. He can learn from his mistakes. Same thing with Robert Saleh and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, I do think although Zach's in like a really solid position, he still has to go out there and execute. I mean, some of the passes last season were pitiful, and then some were like amazing. So if you just kind of find that consistency, it'd be great.
Okay.
From my own fantasy perspective here, you think they're going to do you think they're going to approach the season kind of 50-50 split with Carter and Hall, kind of like how the Broncos do it? Or you think they're just giving Brees the reins?
I think they're going to give Brees the reins. I don't think it's going to be like a Derrick Henry or like a Dalvin Cook situation where it's, you got your lead back and he's taking, 85 to 90% of the snaps. And then you got like one random guy like taking the snaps or like the scraps rather. I do think it might be more like 60-40, 70-30, because that's how the 49ers, that's how the Jets ran it last year. But, even going further to San Francisco, they kind of have like a stable of guy. They have their one main guy, but then they feature like 2 or 3 guys throughout the course of the season.
I got three comments. One is very facetious, which the guys know for me is just setting you up, and then 2 real ones. Okay. The first one is I want you to sing it with me. Okay. When you're a jet all the way from your first cigarette to your last sighted day. When you're a jet, you're the swingingest thing. Little boy, you're a man. Little man, you're a king. You're never alone. You're never disconnected. Went off on your own. When company's expected, you're well protected.
So I actually haven't heard that, or I don't know it.
You make that up? Is that a freestyle?
With you.
No, that's got to be one of the classic. There's a number of original NFL jingles that came from some of the original teams, and I'm pretty sure that's within one of those original. That's an original, is it not?
That for all you young bastards out there, and that's going to be the worst word I say because I got to watch my mouth.
I'm sorry. I know my father, sir.
I'm John.
That is West Side Story.
Never watched it.
Yeah. Hey, you're over here trying to defend them with some classic '60s NFL tune, and he's just doing a musical.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was going to say it had a musical jingle to it, but so did some of the original NFL stuff.
What's our guest's name?
Ian.
Shipmate, you have to learn that. If anything else, the old guy is going to be learning on you. You have to learn that.
So I thought you were going to do Big Daddy and say
no. Just saying. And this is the legitimate stuff. Okay. Other than my wonderful singing.
Barbershop
okay. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I should be on Broadway. The thing is that. And again, wonderful drafts. We've alluded to it earlier. You guys like knocked it out of the park. But like you said, with the competition in that division, how long do you think it's going to take for the Jets to ascend to at least a playoff spot legitimately? Because you said that if all goes well this year, you're 4, hoping 3. Okay. And again, the Bills might be some shine off the Bills maybe within a couple years. Obviously, the Patriots are always dangerous because you don't know what the hoodie has up its sleeve. But when do the Jets become when you can put the words Jets and playoffs in the same sentence from you?
Right, so I'm going to say 2023. One more offseason with free agent acquisitions, maybe another trade, another draft under Joe Douglas's belt. I still think 2022. Like we were talking about it, we're still a year away. My hope is to compete and really hang in with some of the big dogs, not to get blown out by the Colts on Thursday Night Football, or last week of the season against the Buffalo Bills, where it just looks like where it's like varsity versus JV. I really want to be able to hang in. And there were some like really positive moments last year, like against Tampa Bay and even against like the Philadelphia Eagles at the end of the season. But it just wasn't really consistent. One week they would look okay, and then the next week it would just kind of bottom out. But no, to answer your question, 2023 for me.
Okay. And the last one, other than you got to promise me the next time you come on that you know those words. You know those words.
Being the man homework. What is this?
Well, I'm giving you homework. I'm the old guy that says, "Hey, get off my lawn, you
do yours."
Okay.
So is there a title to that song? Did you make it up on the spot?
Got to know the words. Okay, and this
What's
is
the
the
title,
other one.
Captain?
When You're a Jet.
That's the actual title of the song.
I'm looking this up.
Yeah.
From West Side Story.
From West Side Story. The Academy Award-winning film.
Oh no! Don't get me wrong. I know that the film did rather well, and I know it's acclaimed. It's just I didn't realize that was an actual song from that film.
That is an actual song. I mean, I can't freestyle that good. Okay, and I'm going to hold it to you, Ian. Now, this is the other one. The Raiders picked up a receiver by the name of Keenan Cole. Is that going to help out our spot as the number 4 guy, or is Jamarcus Robinson, who we picked up from the Chiefs because they were so happy to get rid of him, who would you rate to be the better receiver that's going to come in and be the Raiders' number 4?
So Cole was interesting because, at least, during his time with the Jets, he would have a couple of just incredible catches, like one-handers, just like the highlight reel types of plays. But as far as like the overall like stats or volume goes, it just wasn't really there. He wasn't really like dependable, reliable. He wasn't the go-to guy, but occasionally he would get behind the defense, or if he was in one-on-one coverage and the pass was a little off schedule, he could come down with some amazing catches. So really good hands. I think honestly, if I just had to call like I see, I think I would rather go with Robinson over Keelan, but to have Keelan as what, your wide receiver 4, I'm guessing.
We got some guy named Adams as 1. And we have some guy named Renfro in the slot. And I think that basically he's going to be the other guy. Okay. The other guy is going to be either Cole or Robinson.
Yeah. So I think I would go with Robinson if I had to be completely fair.
Okay. Well, then here, this is for you there, Givens. We got him. Okay.
I was about to ask him which offensive set of weapons from the AFC West would you rather the Jets have?
It's tough. I think I would probably go. It's either between Denver or Vegas. I always say Oakland.
We do,
but
too.
I will say I do like Kansas City because I think Scantling and Juju are going to have solid years. I don't think.
Say it again, will you? Yeah, you can repeat that. I've been saying that about every episode. So glad
it really seems that Smith-Schuster is just like underrated now. I mean, he was like the talk of the league for a couple of years, and he sounded like that super cheap deal with you guys. Like I think that was just a steal.
Yeah, because it's like performance incentive, and so like if he'll get like $10 million if he has like 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns and I think 80 plus. He's gonna have a good year if he gets paid a lot. And like I said, I think Big Ben kind of held him back the last couple of years, kind of limited the stuff they could do with him. So
you said 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns.
I don't know what it is, but it's something like he's got to have pretty good numbers.
Okay, so it's 13-8. He's never going to see that money.
No, probably. He might not. I don't know, but if he doesn't, then they don't have to pay him that much. So it's kind of a win-win.
Good for y'all. Good for
if they pay him $10 million, then they should be in the Super Bowl. So
yeah, that's true.
Well, Ian, I know you have another commitment that you're kind of prepping for and gonna slide out to pretty soon. So I wanted to thank you for coming on, introducing yourself to our audience. If anyone from your extensive audience that you have over there at Jets Central would like to keep up with the AFC West, we go live here every Wednesday and we go over the AFC West and all of the topics. We also have each of our own podcast channels or networks here. MHRT Network for me. We got Locked On Defense there for Coach, and Captain Jack has his own channel there with regards to Raiders content.
And I do more than show tunes as well.
Yes. Believe it or not, the vast majority of Captain's content is not classic show tunes. It primarily does focus on the Raiders. Now, if you want to let everyone know who's joining us today, both now and after the fact, where they can find you, please go ahead and announce that to everyone who's joining us.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. And if it's cool with you guys, I would love to come back on. I know the Jets don't play, the Chargers, Raiders, or Kansas City this year, but I know I think it's week 5 or week 6, or
Yeah,
it could be
I think
week
it's week
7
6 actually, but yeah.
Yeah, so I would love to do something around then. But yeah, I run a YouTube channel called Jet Central, pretty much talking all things New York Jets.
Awesome.
Fantastic. So, guys, you want to go ahead and check out Jet Central. You can find them on YouTube. You'll likely find me mixed into the comments and whatnot as well. I do check out a fair amount of Ian's content there. Like I said, one of the absolute best premier Jets YouTube channels that you can find on YouTube. And Ian, I just want to thank you again for joining us. And I do look forward to having you back on when the Broncos play the Jets.
Yep, most definitely. Thanks so much, guys. Have a night.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Good seeing you, man.
That was Ian from Jet Central. Great guy, great content on his channel. And if you're looking for just a little, intro bit into the Jets, and you are looking for some additional information, an excellent YouTube channel. And he does little shorts whenever they bring in and have changes as well. So if you're coming up and you're playing the Jets and you're wondering what they're looking like now, it's a great channel to check out. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you all came here because we are an AFC West podcast. And the other major element we have to plan for you today is the review of a pretty substantive, did it go in depth, ESPN article that broke down all 32 teams in the NFL. And it went into depth of their strengths, their weaknesses, and then they took it a step further and then projected out what they felt the starting lineup was going to be for each of the teams. It's one of the rare articles that I've actually been impressed with regards to the ESPN content. I didn't agree with everything that I saw, but I certainly felt that they put a lot of effort into it, and I think that deserves some credit. So without further ado, I'd like to maybe throw this over to you, Alex, to start us off, since we just had a wonderful, almost seamless transition there from Ian with regards to what he felt your wide receivers are going to do this year.
Yeah. The first thing is I don't know if I'd necessarily agree with them ranking the Chiefs roster below the Eagles and the Bengals and the Browns. They put them at 9 on this list, and so I don't really agree with that. I thought for sure they would be below LA, like the Rams and the Chargers and the Bills, but I thought it'd be somewhere in the 5-1 range. 5-4 range. So 9 was like, okay. Outside of that, I pretty much agreed with what they noticed in terms of the biggest weakness. Definitely is up front. Like for as much firepower as we talked about all the other teams getting, the Chiefs only have Chris Jones and maybe Karlaftis, but not really any other outside proven commodities. So I think that's definitely the biggest weakness on the team. And you could tell at times last year where they needed a second reliable option rushing the passer and just applying overall pressure. They didn't always find it. So hopefully Karlaftis' rookie out of Purdue can do that. But you always can't rely on rookies unless, they're Jadeveon Clowney or something, and even him, he fell off. But and I did agree with the kind of X factor it noted that it kind of the season is going to ride on how well this new receiving core meshes and how well they can move the ball with losing Tyreek. I would say that kind of a 1B, albeit it's kind of a wide biggest X factor, but I would say just the defense as a whole, because there's a lot more turnover on the defense than there is on the offense. Losing Matthew and losing a lot of key contributors in the secondary, and then Hitchens. It's going to be interesting to see if these sophomore players don't experience a slump, and kind of the rookie pieces they brought in transition well. But like I said, if the Chiefs score points and they have the offensive production they've had, then it shouldn't be a problem. So, that's why I put it as the 1B. But overall, I thought it was pretty in depth. and I agreed with the points they made in terms of their strengths. I mean, obviously the biggest strength's Mahomes, so I didn't really need to address that. Felt like everyone knew that. But where they put him at 9, I don't agree with that. And then looking at kind of the projected roster, I thought it was interesting that they didn't list Hardman as one of the 3 starters. But I mean, safety doesn't always, they don't use 3 guys and that's it. So it's kind of just like a, participation trophy to be one of the 3 listed here. But I just thought it was interesting that in terms of, I guess, targets and production, they had Hardman off the list, even though, the Chiefs kingdom as a whole is kind of saying that this is his maker, which it is his make or break year to be productive and kind of be that Tyreek type player they drafted him to be. And then the other thing I noted is who they started at right tackle. It's the guy I've been talking about pretty much anytime we talk about the offensive line, and Kennard, which is a rookie they got out of Kentucky. And they put in his PFF grade from college, which is just absurd for how large of a of a dude he is. You wouldn't think he'd be quick to kind of defend some of these speed rushers. But we'll just see if he does capture that spot. I think last week or the week before that, I think going into camp, it's his spot to lose. So obviously kind of the national media sees it as well, putting him in there. Then the other thing on the defense, I don't know if Derek Nandi will be the second defensive tackle with Chris Jones. I think that's pretty much the only question in terms of personnel with how they projected this lineup. Jermaine Carter's going to start in inside backer, but I think Chanel from Wisconsin is kind of knocking on the door because that dude is like a freak, like just like your hard-nosed traditional cowboy collar linebacker that you think just bangs his head into lockers before games and stuff
For fun.
So, yeah, he can make it in.
Yeah, for fun. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's like, just your boss, but better, hopefully. But I think Derek Nandi at that second D tackle is really the only question mark in terms of if someone beats him out. I mean, he was a 3rd-round pick in 2017, so he's been around for a while, but he's never really lived up to where he was picked or what they thought they would get out of him. So I think if someone comes into camp looking better, then you're going to see them starting off the season.
Yeah, and I think some of those comments I think are fair. I certainly wouldn't put let's put it this way: the Chiefs have to prove that they're sliding down to 9. As much as I like to rail on the Chiefs, just because we're on an AFC West podcast, I think they have to prove.
I thought you were going to tell me they need to be like 15 or something. So
yeah, like they need to prove that they're going to slide down that far because they really haven't done that at the NFL level thus far. So I think that's a fair critique of how that was kind of ranked. At the same time, though, I am surprised that you're shocked about how they left Hardman off the list, and I'm only saying that because the Chiefs rotated in other guys instead of Hardman regularly last season. So again, staying in line with the same train of thought that I just kind of said earlier of prove it, I think it's also a fair comment to tell the Chiefs offensively to prove that you think Hardman can be that guy.
Well, I don't know. I think he's got potential, but I would say the reason I thought it was kind of surprising he was off is if you look at their depth chart on ESPN, he's at 1. But more, just because I thought ESPN was going to be cheap enough to just sort of plug in the depth chart they got and be like, there you go. But I think it's more so surprising because, like I said, he was drafted kind of as a potential security piece for if Tyreek was going to be suspended for a year. Because at the time Nicole was drafted, Tyreek had a pending criminal case and civil case, kind of dealing with some stuff with like his child,
personal issues.
Yeah, and they took Hardman 2nd round because and that was the talk was this guy runs a 4.3 40 and is freaky fast and kind of similar play style as Tyreek. So I said it's interesting they left him off because when you lose a player like Tyreek, I would assume you would try at least to start the year to put someone who has a similar athletic skill set and play type in that role and see what he does with it.
Yep. No, I agree.
So that's kind of more so where I was coming from than like, I'm shocked that he's because I'm just because it's also a national thing. So I assume they would just sort of, look at kind of popular names and stuff and not really know between the new signs who's going to be in there. But surely pretty good chance that Hardman doesn't do anything either. So,
no, I think that's fair. And Coach and Captain, just your comments on the Chiefs in general, just from my perspective quickly as a general comment on this, I actually felt that aside from a couple things mixed in for the Chiefs, and even when I was reading the Broncos stuff, I was pleasantly surprised at how well the ESPN stuff here was written on the breakdown of the various teams. And so I thought a couple things needed to be tweaked here and there. And it sounds like you landed in a very similar spot. Coach and Captain, what do you think on the breakdown of ESPN's assessment of the Chiefs?
I think that I guess the ranking's a little bit off to me. But I think the I guess the nuts and bolts of the article for each team is pretty spot on. Where they rank their weaknesses and their strengths is pretty good, as well as the depth chart. I looked at Alex's depth chart, looked at ours, just a glance, and it'd be pretty spot on to me from a personnel perspective. But it has its good and bad to it. But overall, it's a pretty decent article for sure. And leaning toward what Alex was saying about what's going to happen with the defense. Of course, I always lean to that first, but hence the name. But yeah, I'm curious if they actually do a linebacker. He did mention Nick Bolton's name. He was a unsurprising star.
He's a lock.
Yeah. Okay. So you didn't mention he's a lock. Okay.
He's in unless he just has that aggressive sophomore slump. He's the guy. That's why they got rid of Hitchens.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, you didn't mention Nick Bolton's name, but okay.
Unless he's a Mizzou guy,
Yeah. Okay. There it is. There it is. You didn't mention his name because we already knew what it is. Okay. I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. Yeah. Yeah. You got Juan Thorne here starting at safety. That's interesting too. But yeah, it's one of those things you kind of shake your head at. But based on his past performances. But yeah, it's interesting to see what the position battle is. Yeah. We could see, something that, just from a sports fan perspective, could we see Justin Ross and Scott Morris supplant Juju and those guys is playing the number 2 and the number 3 receiver, in short order. When they get into camp and get really rolling into the offense, just their talent alone could lend to them getting more playing time. That's something we probably well, so I'm interested to see how that shakes out.
Or preseason.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
or preseason.
Ross is going to be like preseason superstar,
Yeah, they're very well. They're going to get a lot of chances because they're backups right now. So the backups get a lot of playing time in preseason.
Oh yeah. There's always someone that like balls out on every team receiver rise, and then you don't hear from them the rest of the year.
I know, right? So yeah, I'm definitely going to love to see exactly how the wide receiver battles shake out, and who's going to ascend to who to be that number 1 guy, and who's going to follow.
One thing you mentioned Thornhill, I've always thought it's interesting that Brian Cook, the guy that they drafted out of Cincinnati, who, if you watch the Cincinnati tape, he's kind of a dog at safety. They got these aggressive dudes that just fly around. That was kind of the theme of the draft. But he's not really talked about, at least at this stage, as pushing for, number 1 reps or pushing into a rotation. And it kind of seems like in anything I look at, it doesn't really talk about him. And I'm a kind of a victim of this myself because I didn't really mention him in stuff I write about or when I talk. But then I go back and look, and you're like, yeah, they spent a 2nd-round pick on him, or 3rd-round pick. So, they saw something in him, and you think sooner rather than later you're going to try to get him in. And I just think it's interesting that at this point it's all Juan Thornhill. But I think it's an easy spot for him to lose.
True. And I think overall ESPN kind of lended to giving the rookies a kind of a step back. They kind of put them lower in the depth chart just because they're rookies. Like you just really don't know. Like one person they really give love to is Scott Morris being the slot guy. But we still have to see about that. But same thing with JC Woods for the Chargers. Like, he's a superstar ball hawking safety from Baylor. And they didn't even mention him at all either. I think he's gonna be in a 3 safety rotation with him with Derwin and Nasir. So yeah, I think he have a good year too. So we just have to wait and see.
Yeah. In my opinion, if you're spending the 3rd round pick or higher, like there's no reason to not
They're going
play
to get
that
time.
person. Like, unless it's a quarterback and you don't necessarily need to play the quarterback, then I am always for like let him sit because that's like a 90% mental thing. And you put him out there too soon, career's over.
Or ask Sam Darnold.
Yeah, right.
Yep. Got anything, Cap?
Yeah. I was so thoroughly disgusted with the ESPN article because I couldn't find it.
What?
And that's not a joke.
You don't have ESPN Plus, do you?
That's what that is.
I actually do have ESPN Plus, and I clicked on the thing and it said if you're a subscriber, click here. And I'm a subscriber because I have it with my phone, and I kept hitting it, and it wouldn't show up. So that makes me thoroughly disgusted with ESPN and ABC and all of the people that I'm supposed to be getting all of these freebies from, that because I was like, what the foxtrot is going on?
I tell you, they placed the Raiders at 21st. I mean, seems pretty fair.
I don't agree with that. But see, and there's the thing. I can't really debate here because this is my information, okay? And I'm going to echo some of the things that have already been said. And Ed Winchell says it well. Don't kick dirt on the Chiefs until they actually don't show up anymore. But we can infer, we can feel that there is going to be a letdown, and not just because of losing one guy, but I think that when you take a very important cog out of the machine, it takes a while until something is inserted into that cog, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 things that did the same thing as the one, that it does affect the overall whole. And that's why I said that people are always poo-pooing the Raiders. I mean, every friggin' year they poo-poo what the Raiders are going to do. I mean, it goes without saying, the Raiders suck, the Raiders suck, the Raiders suck. Okay? And then we usually do better than what they say. Yep. Or we have a letdown at the end of the year, the previous years, where we coulda, woulda, shoulda, but we didn't. So I can't really debate that. I'm not gonna piss on the Chiefs until they actually show that they've the bed. And that's why I go by with what I said the original time, that this division, top to bottom, is going to be separated by 4 games at the most. That this division is the tightest in football. This division is going to be tough. I did find, because the one thing I was able to get, I did get the projections for my team as far as what the depth chart is, but I will go into that when I'm allowed to. But again, I can't give you what I can't give you. But I will say that ESPN notoriously will prop up Kansas City because they've been the champs for so long. They're gonna crap on us because they're BSPN, and that's why they're BSPN. They're gonna say really good things about Denver getting Russell Wilson because that's glitz, and they're gonna say awesome good things about the Los Angeles Garglers because of Justin Herbert, and that's just the way it is. And if the numbers project to that, then I would be guaranteed that that's probably the way the list came out, that the Raiders were the lowest ranked team of all the teams in the AFC West per ESPN. Am I right?
It said the offensive line. Very much that was kind of the crux of it. You didn't do anything to improve your offensive line or protect Carr.
Okay, that is their opinion.
Well,
that is their opinion, because I think that the very first pick that we did in the draft was an offensive lineman. By the end of the year will be a significant cog, if not a starter early at guard. By the end of the year, might even be in at center. So again, if they're not paying attention to what our very first pick that we had because again, the Raiders and the Broncos didn't have picks 1 and 2, but we did have a pick for
Broncos. Had a second round.
I'm sorry.
Broncos had a second round pick.
Okay, well, apologies. The first pick that the Raiders had was in round 3, and we picked an offensive lineman. So ESPN is not paying attention again. Okay, ESPN is not paying attention in the fact that our 7th round pick, Thayer Munford, played guard and tackle for the Ohio State University and can play all along the offensive line. Okay.
But do you really want to be going into a season talking about relying on a 7th round pick to protect?
No. You said that they said that we didn't do anything, and I'm saying how we did. I'm just saying if that's what they said, then they don't even read, and that doesn't surprise me with BSPN.
They can't read good.
Yeah, they don't read good.
You didn't go to the Derek Zoolander Center.
No.
The depth chart though, because they had Leatherwood starting at right tackle. Parham was going to start.
I'll talk about that when it's my time, Coach. That's the one thing I actually could find was our depth chart.
Yes,
I have some issues with.
I'd like to maybe jump over to the Chargers next, Coach, to kind of have you give your rundown over your team. I think that the Chargers, from my perspective, made some incredible offseason moves. I'm not surprised by some of the content that came out of ESPN. I mean, I honestly think that the entire AFC West, nice. I actually think that the entire AFC West made massive moves forward and has basically put the rest of the NFL on notice. But I think that the Chargers in particular really made some great moves. Curious on your thoughts on what ESPN had to say, as well as your thoughts on the depth chart.
Well, I have no argument with a lot of the stuff that they have done, honestly, truly. A little bit on the interior line perspective, I think they have Morgan Fox starting I want to call it interior defensive line, because we wanted 34. You have 2 ends, a nose tackle, and you have 2 edges. So they had Morgan Fox coming in from the Panthers as a day 1 starter, which I'm not sure about it being him or being another guy that I have my eye on in particular. But because I actually had Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Jerry Tillery starting day 1. But outside of that, I think that they were pretty good with the personnel grouping. They actually hinted on the idea of Joshua Palmer supplanting Jalen Guyton at the slot, which I thought it was going to be a surprise based upon his camp performance and his matriculation in offense after a year of his coming off his rookie season. But overall, I think that and the idea of them saying Trey Pipkins is going to be a right tackle, because early on I projected that Jameer Salyer would take the job. But they have Matt Fowler staying at left guard and Trey Pipkins playing right tackle. Now, a lot of Chargers fans on Twitter and things of that nature have seen him in one of the most prestigious offensive line camps in the offseason, and the guy that runs the camp is giving him high praise, that he's taking leaps and bounds in his progression, in his production, and his ability to play the tackle position. So it's going to be a battle. I mean, you have Storm Norton, Salyer, and Pipkin fighting for the right tackle position. I think everything else is pretty solid as far as who's going to start. Zion Johnson, right guard, is going to play right guard, obviously. Lindsey, Fowler, and Slater, all pretty much easy, you can pin those guys in early on to be starters, just who's going to be a right tackle. But outside of that, I think that it's pretty spot on. A lot of people aren't high on Kenneth Murray coming back and having a better season this year from his sophomore slumping season, injury riddled as well. But overall, I think they're pretty spot on with the idea of our strengths being our pass rush, our weakness being right tackle, and our X factor being Sebastian Joseph Day as a run stopper, which why we brought him here from the Rams. So overall, I think it's pretty accurate from a depth chart perspective and what our strengths and weaknesses are. So yeah, I like it. It's interesting they put us third above the Rams and right below the Buccaneers, which I found interesting. And the Bills clearly number 1. So yeah, the rankings are pretty okay from 1 through 5, and then it gets kind of weird. Like I think the Packers
started doing crack.
Yeah, the Packers are number 5. I don't.
Here we go. Eagles. Browns.
Right.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
one of the craziest. It's like, how do you look at everything
was.
that's going on and put the Browns at 6?
Yeah. I don't know about that one, but after about
Well, you know,
5,
They had the Browns at 6. You just proved my point that these guys are on crack, cocaine, and some really heavy hallucinogens of mushrooms and PCP and purple microdots all rolled into one. With a bad taste.
I don't even know what half of that stuff is, but
right.
mostly the micro.
Right. Yeah, he's surpassed my knowledge of
PCP.
yeah, but yeah, I think that you pull out certain pieces, certain things are spot on, and certain things you're like, what are they talking about? So yeah, you take the good with the bad.
No, 100%. But you're always going to have that sort of thing with articles that are written like this. Especially when they're done with all 32 teams rolled into one massive article like this.
Right.
I mean, you're always going to have a few things that as either a fan or a fanalist or, someone who's, super into the analytics and stuff, you're going to look at some of that stuff and say that's ridiculous. The one thing that I was surprised that the article didn't call out is the fact that aside from Joseph Day, I don't recall any major upgrades in that dead center interior for the Chargers.
Austin Johnson from the Giants.
Right. But the question would be is he going to be a difference maker as a depth guy if, say, Day gets injured or, one of your other guys gets hurt? Basically, what I'm getting at is if the main guy you brought in to do the thing, that you needed to get fixed has an injury, do you think you have someone else behind him who can also elevate the team, or are you relying on the one guy to basically bridge the gap?
No, I think we have solid depth in the East position because, like I said, you got to quantify Austin Johnson being a solid nose, 2-gap responsibility, nose tackle, run stopping, larger specimen. And we also drafted Otito Obi. I can't pronounce his last name. I've tried. I can't do it. Otito O from UCLA, and I believe in the 5th round. So he's a 330-pound run stopping guy. So he's more slated for a nose is a backup role and maybe playing a rotational spot when Johnson and Day need blows from a rep perspective. But you also, like I said, y'all have Morgan Fox and Jerry Tillery filling in at the end spot. So you have one person backing up the 3 starters in the interior. And I think they'll all make the roster, and from my projections. So I think we have solid depth. We have 6 solid guys that can all play the run well and stop the run well. That outside of maybe Jerry Tillery, because I have questions about him. I'm not going to sit here and turn a different page, and because I've been critical of him in the past. But he's definitely a good pass rushing DT. So you have to outside of that, I would say 5, maybe 6 solid guys in the interior that can all play the interior D line, and they'll be solid contributors if they have to play a lot of reps.
No, I can see that. I guess what I was kind of more getting at is the Giant. How big of a drop off is the guy from the Giants compared to Day?
Well, they play 2 positions. Johnson is a nose tackle, and Day is an end.
Right. So, but Day is a run stuffing end. So if I were to compare, a lot of the Broncos fans are looking at DJ Jones and they're trying to plug him in at D end as a replacement for Harris. I see him potentially filling a little bit more in perhaps at the nose tackle, D tackle position myself.
Okay.
But I guess what you're saying is you're seeing him filling in, or he is in your mind, a strictly a D end. So then in the middle of the field, how do you feel that you're going to be able to withstand some of the bully style teams? I'm just going to go back to the AFC North. The AFC North seemingly always has big bully to grind. They have meat grinders that seem to be at the offensive line, and they're always good. No, the D lines are almost always good in the AFC North, but then so are their offensive lines, simply because as soon as the first 3 weeks of the season is done, they basically go right into running mode. So you always end up with meat grinders that are up in the AFC North just due to the nature. And those are my people, right? Coming from Canada, that's just the way we roll things. So I look at that kind of style, and that's kind of how I like football. But how do you think that your interior D line is going to manage the bullies of the NFL, like the Buffaloes and other guys like that?
Well, I wouldn't call Buffalo a bully ball team when it comes to running the ball. I mean, they got to prove that to me. But I definitely agree with you with the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns can definitely, really power block, power run to the heavens. Like that's not a question. I want to say, can Pittsburgh get back to that as well? They're starting to develop their line. So and if they're healthy, the Ravens have a pretty road grading offensive line as well. So definitely 3 out of the 4. But yes, I would definitely say that they have a power running style, but thankfully enough, I mean, you look at the schedule, we don't got to play all 4 of those teams either. So that's a blessing. So, but just having to play one of them, I think, like I said, just having bigger bodies in the interior, strong guys that can hold ground and hold those linemen up. So our second line of defense can make plays. That's basically what they're there for. And I think they can do a good job at that. Like I said, I think, Austin and Sebastian Joseph for sure can take up blocks and allow Tranquil and Murray to make plays in the interior, and Bosa and Mack would be fine on the edge if they got to go one-on-one and get tackles and tight ends. So I think we're in a pretty good spot in my opinion.
Alex, by the way, just for you, make sure you go through the chat, and because you don't know what PCP is.
No, I know what that is. I didn't know what purple dot magic.
Purple microdots?
Yeah, I didn't know the street lingo. I know the government name. I just didn't know.
And I didn't even touch on fentanyl.
Well, that's like kills half the nation today. So
let's just say I roll in different circles. That doesn't come up in conversation. But with regards to the Chargers, I really do think that the article seemed to touch on enough where I thought they captured a good amount of what was done in the offseason. I think they did collectively have enough there. As I noticed with the Broncos side of things, there was 1 or 2 things I said, just no.
Mm-hmm.
And I got, again, much like Alex, I think you landed in a similar position to me. I think you looked at it and said, hey, the vast majority of this I pretty much agree with, except for, that thing needs to be tweaked, that thing needs to be tweaked, and that needs to be tweaked.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the rankings are a different story, but we can kind of go into that later. But I think that when it came to the highs, the lows, and the X factors, I think they captured more accurately than not the various things that I've seen from both the Chiefs and the Chargers, and in some respects, the Broncos.
Yeah, I like how they put their grades in there from their position as well. That was actually smart.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I honestly thought for the Chargers, this is just after looking at it, I kind of thought that their biggest strength could also be like their biggest X factor, and it kind of hints at it with like if Mac's not healthy, then that whole game plan's kind of shot. And I think honestly, that's a big reason why you saw the Chargers get Khalil Mack. That's why you saw the Raiders get Chandler Jones to have that, kind of 1-2 punch to rush the passer. Because honestly, if you got an elite pass rush, then you can kind of have a mediocre everything else. Because they don't got time to throw the ball, then you don't really got to worry about aggressively covering. And in my opinion, that's like the bigger X factor for the Chargers. Because I mean, if they had a little bit better defense last year, probably a lot different story about how their season panned out and how we're looking at it this year.
We just had a mediocre defense. We would be in the playoffs. We had the 29th ranked defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's outside of getting the J.C. Jackson and Callahan, Max the biggest addition, because if he's half of the Khalil Mack he was with Oakland, it was Oakland at that time, so I'm going to keep it there, or Chicago, then then some of that stuff can kind of get masked,
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is an interesting question from Edward. And Edward, I saw your previous comment way up in the chat now earlier in the show with regards to how I got involved with the Broncos. I will directly answer that, I promise, at the very end of the episode here.
Maybe he doesn't want to know now.
Well, maybe he's moved on to another question, but I will answer that because it is a question that I have been asked a few times, and I'm more than happy to bring that forward. And Lafayette, I do recognize you from Captain Jack and his channel. I'm not going to get into the whole, recreational drugs stuff, but I am going to get into the question of whether I'm a fan of the CFL at the end of the show as well, just because, again, that's come up. I've seen a few chats over a few shows. So with regards to which team in the AFC West to date has done the best in the offseason so far, and we'll use this as maybe an intermission between the Broncos and the Raiders going next for the ESPN article. I think it's a really interesting one, and I think it's a matter of weighting what you think each team has done to fix the weaknesses that they had from what they witnessed the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're going to rank, and I think that's probably the fairest way of doing it, because I think you're going to have issues if you try to say, well, this guy was better than this guy, and we did this and we did that. I think that you're going to get into a little murky water when you get into doing that sort of thing. I think that the Broncos are probably either first or second, given the fact that we addressed our quarterback position, and that was a huge issue for us. I also think we addressed the run stopping with DJ Jones. I also think we drafted a run stopping D end as well, or nose tackle, D tackle in Wazarike. And we also covered off a few other positions of need, with the exception of a clear cut starting right tackle spot. That said, none of us did. So that I kind of see that non-move as a bit of a neutral one. So I'm torn between first and second between the Broncos, and if I had to pick personally second, I would probably look towards the Chargers as number two, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I just think that the Chargers were more heat-seeking missiles in the offseason in terms of seeking specific targeted spots and positions and finding the people that they wanted to fill those roles. Now, we don't know how those people are going to fit into the team. We don't know how they're going to all mesh with the other existing players on the roster. Same holds true for Denver and, frankly, all of our teams. But if you're looking at the offseason, which is what the question is here, I think that you can start flip-flopping between the Broncos and the Chargers. As a third, because obviously between the two, I would put the Raiders in that third position based on their offseason moves. I think they brought in an edge rusher. I think they addressed some other positions. The only thing that I would say that the Raiders did not do personally enough of, if you will, is bring in clear-cut starters in some of their secondary to basically put a stamp on it. And I felt that that's the biggest difference between, say, what the Chargers did and, say, what the Raiders did, is that the Chargers brought in clear-cut starters at certain positions in the secondary, and the Raiders didn't do that. And then last, in terms of fourth in the division, although that being said, they came in first in the division the year before, so this is where you're in that whole prove it conversation that we had earlier in the pod, which is the Chiefs. And so then the question is, did they do enough to maintain their position within the division? And we're going to find that out this year.
May I interject? Because I've been silent for way too effing long.
Go ahead.
Okay, because I've been eating my props, because this is National Hot Dog Day. In case you guys were figuring out why I was eating, chili cheese.
Like 25 hot dogs. You're like a Joey Chestnut over there.
I was just going to say that. Joey Chestnut of the chat, huh?
See him choke that guy out and then still win.
I still got half of one, but I'm full. I'll have leftovers tomorrow. I think, in my estimation, Ed, and this is me, and I'm not going to poo-poo on the Chiefs because they were the AFC West champs. They didn't have to make a lot of changes. The biggest thing that they didn't do was they lost somebody, and it remains to be seen whether, like I said, those cogs in MVS and Juju Smith-Schuster will be able to take up for what Hill did. Okay. And by the way, Carper, that's what I want to rant about, but we'll go to that after or before the show.
The Glizzy game.
I will have a rant about hot dogs too. But the thing is that I honestly think that Denver finally got a quarterback. The question is it the best move? Because I honestly think that the Chargers, with all of their moves that they made, improved the most in the AFC West because they had to address the defense. The Chargers were the most improved team in the AFC West. Will it be enough? I think that the Raiders did figure out that they needed a number one, so they went out and they got the best number one in the what do you call it in football, and then they have Wilson Kryptonite in the name of Chandler Jones. They did not address the secondary, as my friend. See, I'm pointing correctly, by the way. I figured out that I had to do it opposite. Yep. As my friend stated, and that will be something that will be, we'll see what happens. Yes, they got some D-backs. Yes, they picked up some guys. Will it be enough? We don't know, because we are now under the auspices of the DZ. And I said it for my boy DZ.
He's assimilated you.
Assimilated. You know what? Screw it. It's DZ. But it depends. Like I said, is Burrow's going to be it? But we got rid of Arnett, but we got Averett. We got Rock Ya-Sin. Was it addressed? You say it wasn't addressed. I think it was, and I like what they did in that stead, because Mullen, the schmuck, goes and has surgery after the draft. So we did get Rock Ya-Sin. We did get Anthony Averett. And by the way, on the same day, it was addressed, okay? And then Burrow, the kid that we got from the Bengals, who is actually his best thing that's going to be here, is that he's going to be doing punt return, so I don't have to go see Renfro break legs, either his or somebody else's, on a punt return. So that was addressed. Was it up to par? Maybe not. And that's why I said, if you look at what the Broncos did, they went out and got Russell Wilson. Yay! Is that going to be enough? Again, remains to be seen. And so, like I said, I'd go Chargers 1. I'm going to give us 2. Because I don't think that Russell Wilson is the end-all be-all with the Broncos. I like what their offense had anyway. So, that's going to be an upgrade. And, again, the Chiefs by default are 4 because they didn't really pick up anybody because they didn't really need to. And I think that was analytical, unbiased opinion.
Okay. Well, I share Cap's sentiment and said I think we're 1 because if you look at it from the totality of free agency moves and draft, just because we had a lot of draft capital and we had a lot of money to spend in free agency, I think we did the best out of all things considered in this particular offseason. Like, you want to rank rosters, we know we can get into that, in a different conversation. But as far as it over the totality of what we did of getting Khalil Mack, getting J.C. Jackson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, Bryce Callahan, all those were just free agents moves before we even got to the draft. Then we improved the O-line with Zion Johnson, J.T. Woods, Isaiah Spiller. So not only we did draft needed positions and improve vastly on defense, but we did one thing we have never done in the past is draft quality depth, and having those guys that they can fill in for those guys that we may miss the injury, from, totality of the season. So you got to look at it from that perspective as well. So I think this roster, and I think, all my Chargers fans can agree with this, that this roster gets us excited because we've never seen this in the past 15 to 20 years, I want to date myself as far as going back too far, but at least in the 2000s, this roster is the deepest we've had from a talent perspective and a production perspective. So we got the quarterback, we got the receivers, we got the tight end. Our line is the best I've seen it since the Damian Tomlinson days. Defense is vastly improved. The secondary is good. So pay Derwin James, and we can make some noise. So that's where I land with it as far as us being the clear-cut favorite as far as being the most vastly improved team. Now, a lot of people aren't giving the Chiefs credit, but I think the Chiefs nailed the draft. I mean, I'm going to say it. I think they nailed the draft.
Thank you.
I think they, people aren't giving them credit for what they've done, but the Sky Moore edition, the Justin Ross edition, those just were the receivers that people are sleeping on. There were highly productive people in college that could fit this scheme and fit this system well. On top of getting McDuffie, on top of getting Arnold and Bichetti. Did I say it right? Is it the D lineman y'all got? What was it?
Karlaftis?
Karlaftis. I'm sorry. I got Arnold.
I was like, who the hell?
I got him confused with Karlaftis. I'm sorry. You got
the
Karlaftis.
kid out of Purdue. His name is Karlaftis.
Right. The kid Karlaftis from Purdue. So I think they definitely with the capital they got from the Tyreek move, they hit on pretty much every draft pick in the first 3 rounds. So I would say they definitely killed the draft, and then having to bring in Valdez Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster. Like I think Alex alluded to this idea of them getting a bunch of guys that can be as productive holistically as one guy was for them in the past 3 years. So
Didn't I say that?
You said it because I said it. I mean, you're just quoting.
Right.
So
You know
I just take a different stance on that in simply saying that it's much harder to build chemistry with 2 or 3 people than it is with one. So from my
Kelsey.
So no, but my whole point is that Kelsey's getting older, and the reason why I put the Chiefs further down that list at 4 is, yeah, you can bring in 3-4 guys, and they may collectively do okay. But the question is are they going to know when Mahomes has to do like the 3 spin moves, a pirouette, and a backflip in order to get a throw off? Are they going to know to turn left rather than right? Are they going to know to run to the sideline rather than run backwards? Like Tyreek knew to do the certain things that Mahomes wanted to do. And it is very, very difficult to build chemistry with one guy, let alone 3. And that's ultimately what my point is. And I don't disagree with the fact that if 2 of the 3 guys work out, the Chiefs probably won't even lose a step. But
one guy works out, really. I mean,
but you need probably 2 out of the 3 to work out, because I think that it's a fair statement to make that unless Hardman really surprises, I think is a fair, way of putting it, then you're going to need 2 of the 3 to work out to fill in the gaps. And again, because Mahomes seemed to have a real comfort level with Pringle. I don't know why, because he dropped.
I don't know why you're so caught up on Pringle.
It was really weird.
Last year.
Like it was really weird that he had this super, I trust you. Now here it is, and then Pringle would like mess it up or something a lot of the time.
But word of the offseason is he's got that. He's building that up with Valdez Scantling. That's like anytime you look at any Chiefs content, that's what it is. Is Mahomes and Scantling seem to be kind of really meshing and on the same page. So
right. I want to make sure we get to the other 2 teams here, Alex. Do you want to quickly maybe go through your rankings, and then we'll have over to Captain to give his take on the Raiders?
Yeah. I mean, I do disagree with you guys saying the Chiefs didn't do enough. I think it's more of how Cap said it. They did what they needed to do for not really needing to do anything, and they, in my opinion, did have the best draft. I think from the Chiefs, the most important thing is what they were able to turn around with what they lost. I mean, they lost some really high caliber players, and it's not like they're talked about, being at the bottom of the barrel. So I think that's kind of the bigger thing. I would still put them below, because I guess to answer the question, I would think of it more as who did something to change the total trajectory of their season in this offseason. And to me, that would be the Broncos, because if they did not get Wilson, then we're not even talking about them. And everyone said that last year. They were a quality quarterback away from being a very competitive team. And so they did what they needed to do to get into that realm. And now everyone, you got people picking them to make the playoffs, maybe even the Super Bowl. So I think from that kind of measuring standard, it would have to be the Broncos. Then second, I would give it the Chargers. The Chargers, I think, did more than Denver did, but they didn't need, I guess, to do such a drastic move like get a Russell Wilson. But I think they did a lot of complementary things to add to what they already have and improve their defense. And kind of the same with the Raiders. I think the Raiders just somewhat lost some pieces, and that's more so to the players' fault than their own. I mean, they lost some key young guys in the secondary that they had to get rid of. They got, Ruggs, kind of had some other turmoil and losing people. But bringing in a Devontae Adams changes the face of your offense, and a Chandler Jones changes the face of your pass rush defense. So that's, in terms of changing the projection of the success of the season, I think that Denver has to be one.
Fair enough. So, Captain, I'm gonna throw the floor over to you to discuss the Raiders, but just really quick before I do, all of you who are joining us tonight, we just want to thank you very much for joining us live. Love the liveliness of the chat. Super important. There's a new ticker that you may notice there at the bottom that's scrolling across the screen. A lot of you may not realize if you are in fact joining us by Twitter, sadly, Twitter removed the flow through to a lot of these streaming services that allow us to broadcast out. So we're not able to actually see your comments or anything like that. So if you are in fact over on Twitter, if you wouldn't mind coming over to whether it be Facebook or YouTube, either one of those two platforms, we can then see your comments in the chat here. We really do want to hear from you. We want to broadcast those comments out to the rest of the audience here so we can answer any questions you may have. So I just wanted to call that out to make sure that anyone who is joining us on Twitter just knows that we're not ignoring you. And so that if you do want to participate live in the show, that you just jump into one of those other two platforms that allow us to interact with you directly. And Captain, over to you.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for acknowledging the old guy. I still want to bitch about the fact that I was almost late because I went to Sam's Club at 7:00 on the dot, and I went in line, and they said that we were closed, and I wanted to get some hot dogs from Sam's Club, so I had to get them from Steak and Shake instead. So I wanted to have the proper prop for Hot Dog Day, and that's my bitch. That's my rant.
So you're going to Costco. Never
I'm
trust the Walton.
member. I'm not a Costco member. I'm a Sam's Club member.
Yeah, so am I.
Okay.
I get their pizza.
Okay. So again, that's my bitch. Is that at 7:00 on the dot, and they said they were closed. Lady, bad customer service. Okay. Anyway, and again, not that I didn't not do the homework assignment. I just couldn't get into the homework assignment. I did try. The one thing I did say about ESPN, and again, I do like the fact that they try to project what the depth of the Raiders is going to be. I can't understand, though, how they can have Jarrett Stidham as our backup quarterback, even though he knows the system. I just can't see that. I just can't see that. I mean, if you get Nick Mullins, who is more capable than him, yeah, he doesn't know the system as well, but he's a far sight better than Jarrett Stidham. I mean, there was even talk that the Raiders were going to trade Stidham for a ham sandwich and a Coke to somebody who needed a quarterback if they needed a quarterback on the fly. And they have him as our second string quarterback. There at least were apt enough to say that Adams and Drake were questionable due to their injuries. But they also have, and I like this, but I'm not sure about it. They have the Georgia running back Zamir White ahead of Brandon Bolden. And while that might happen, I don't think it's going to happen at the very beginning because, again, Bolden knows the system, has proved his wealth with the Patriots under McDaniel's system. So I can't see him being below Zamir White right there. Okay. Drugs are bad. Okay. And then we got, again, what we were talking about. They have Demarcus Robinson as the wide receiver, as the third wide receiver straight up. And again, I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. Again, the jury's still out on that. They have Keelan Cole there behind Adams, and I don't see that. I can see that Demarcus Robinson and Keelan Cole basically playing for the same spot, not Keelan Cole being the understudy to Devontae Adams. That was perplexing as well. They did have Lester Cotton at second string behind Denzel Good, who is questionable, and maybe he is. I know that when Richie Incognito retired the other day, it was like the Lester Cotton uprising show about the greatest thing in the world that the Raiders have at offensive line that's not starting is Lester Cotton. But I can't see him in front of Jermaine Illuminor, who actually knows the system and was a vital cog with that system. They have Leatherwood at right tackle starting. I can see that. They still have Brandon Parker on the team. I don't know about that one. They have Cleveland Farrell as a backup to Max Crosby, which to me, I can't see that because again, if anybody's going to be the first edge rusher off the bench is going to be Malcolm Kuntz, who they do have behind Chandler Jones, but I just don't see Cleve Farrell even being a part of this team. I think he's going to be traded for somebody that needs a good stalwart kid that didn't get the chance that he should have been given. With the injuries to Hankins and Bilal Nichols, they have them both out, which makes sense. The question is, they have Pecco and Butler as the two defensive tackles there. That's Vernon Butler, by the way. But they have Neil Farrell as a fourth stringer and some guy named Tyler Lancaster is third. And I have no clue who the hell Tyler Lancaster is. Okay? And I can guarantee you that Farrell and Butler, the kid that they drafted, they're going to be important cogs. And they might actually be second stringers. They're going to be, obviously with Hankins and Bilal Nichols out now, they're going to be vying for that spot. I don't understand that. So again, the things with ESPN or BSPN, it's amazing. So they got Abram starting at strong safety. I can't see that either. I think Abram is going to be a package deal because he's such a liability in pass coverage that maybe they think, okay, on 1st and 10, it'll be a running down. So we'll get the one down out of Abram by putting him in the box, and then he's not going to be as liable to get burned. But against people, everybody in the AFC West, if he is starting as the strong safety right out the gate, we have an issue. I want somebody in there that's going to be able to cover people, and that will be Eric, that will be Harmon, that will be Gillespie.
Great value.
Harmon in the article. Harmon's starting in the article.
Yeah.
Harmon is starting. Okay, well that makes sense. I'm just like I said. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a coach. So thank you for that. Yeah. I agree with Harmon starting. I agree for sure. Thank you for that.
No problem.
And they were up to date in the fact that they did have Dalen Levitt already being cut because he's not even on here. So at least that they had somebody that figured out that when the guy gets cut, that we better take him off the roster. So I will give them that they have at least a fact checker doing that. I will give a quick lick thumbs up. But there's a lot of things there. I can't see Illuminor behind somebody when he knows the system, and I think he's going to be an important cog. I don't see Darian Butler, who is the kid that already played for our linebackers coach, necessarily as a third stringer. I think he might actually supplant Micah Kaiser in this system. Whoa. That's my opinion, but we'll see. So I again, apologies for not being able to get to the article. I clicked until I was about ready to throw the computer, but I wasn't able to do it, guys.
I think Kaiser's a little bit more of a more versatile player than people are really giving him credit for at that position. So I think you're undervaluing what you're likely going to get from him.
I'm not that I'm undervaluing Kaiser. I think that they don't even know about the fact that Darian Butler played at Arizona for the linebacker coach. So to them, he's just another effing guy. He actually knows the system.
He might know the system, but I've seen Kaiser play, and I think that he's going to surprise in certain situations enough where, it's a good problem to have. You're starting to argue over whether or not your depth guys are going to be really good or not. And, I wish I might in certain positions, right? Like it's one of those things where isn't that wonderful where you're arguing and saying, hey, I think both my depth guys are going to be fighting for that spot. It was like, well, that's a really, really nice problem to have. But I do think Kaiser's going to be perhaps even more of a factor than you think over the course of the season, so long as he stays healthy.
Right.
And
you're giving me the best segue of all. is the fact that the Raiders, for the first time in a long time, every draft, and I'm talking draft picks now, every draft pick that they had is not expected to be plugged right in there and play. That they like the fact that they are making these guys go up to the system, and they're going to be depth guys to start eventually. And I think that's the very first time in forever that the Raiders don't have to worry about, well, this guy is your first round pick. Well, our first and second round picks are Devontae Adams, so he's going to start. But the third round pick, the first guy that we picked, is not expected to start. The kid out of Georgia is not expected to start. The tackles are not expected to start. They're going to be, and actually all the tackles, the defensive tackles, as well as the other tackle, Mumford, not expected to start. And they're going to be used for depth. And I like the fact that the Raiders have finally have a draft where they're getting quality depth. So thanks for the segue as well.
No worries. And the only other thing I will say, just from my experience with your new head coach, is I think he had a really solid vision for the team. I think that his personality didn't mesh particularly well in Denver, but when you look at what got us to the Super Bowl in those 2 seasons, a good portion of the talent that was drafted by McDaniels, or in the McDaniels era, was as a result of his influence. Now, the only thing that he struggled with when he was here in Denver, and I do think that as a Raiders super fan and any Raiders fans that are joining us today need to be careful of, is McDaniels did struggle with what Belichick seems to thrive in. And that is, if a guy goes down, he just fills the gaps and moves forward. And they seem to not miss a beat much, if at all. Whereas McDaniels, when he was in Denver, struggled to kind of stay calm and move on, I guess, if you're going to try to, characterize it. And I do think that that's something that you're going to have to see if McDaniels has matured over the years and has been able to not fall into the same traps he did when he was in Denver.
Remains to be seen, and hopefully
Right.
he's improved and figured it out.
He did when he was in Denver. Right.
My thing is just that projected defense just looks rough with the, especially when you look at the PFF scores they put next to all of it. It's just like it's super depressing. It's a lot of 40s. That's just I just don't know if the Raiders did enough outside of getting Chandler Jones. But like I did say earlier, if you have a good pass rush, some of that stuff can kind of be masked. So we'll see.
I think the Raiders had the same problem the Chargers had last year in lack of depth, like the quality of depth. I think they had decent starters, but they had the depth quality isn't there, in my opinion. I think the drop off from starter to backup is telling, in my opinion. I think we're going to see that if you take an injury here or there, knock on wood that you don't. But if you do, I think the production from your backups are going to be different than your starters, in my opinion.
Okay, well, that's your opinion, and opinions are just like a-holes.
Yeah, Cap.
They're all clean.
Well, the one thing I will say, just in general, is everyone kind of goes in and hopes that their team has done enough in the offseason. And the one thing that we all are ultimately surprised in is that, generally speaking, and this I can speak for myself, I'm not going to speak for any of you guys, but you think that a guy that you drafted is going to be able to slot in and show out.
Yeah.
And then you're ultimately surprised that for whatever reason, they don't step up when they're given the opportunities that they have on the field, and you're kind of disappointed. And then you have, on the flip side of that, other guys where you're saying, hey, I kind of knew who you were, but I didn't expect you to play that well when you were put in. And a guy like that, for example, for the Denver Broncos, if I'm going to equate this for the Broncos fans, would have been Caden Stearns, who stepped in for us last year, who we all kind of generally knew who he was, but every time he was on the field, he just killed it. And so I just think that we need to kind of see how these young men transition into the NFL when they are then playing against superior competition. And you truly never know which ones are going to step up and which ones are going to step out. and it's just a matter of seeing what they do when the opportunities are presented. And if they're given one opportunity this year and they bomb, can they bounce back on their second or third opportunity before they're kicked out the door?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's kind of it's like the catch-22, right? It's like when teams have a lot of like a solid draft and a lot of draft pieces coming in, it's like people use that as a mechanism to say they're turning the page. But it's like at the very same time, they could have drafted a whole bunch of people that just don't pan out for their scheme or just duds in general. And it's it's just such a crapshoot. It's like I said with the Karlaftis guy. I mean, they took him in the first round. Granted, it was late, but they're relying on him to be, that's that complimentary pass rusher and just edge pressure. And it may work out, but that's a lot to ask of someone who's like 22. So
right. They're hoping it pans out because they want to push Frank Clark out the door. So I'm sure they want. They hope he gets.
Yes, yeah. We didn't have to, but it'll be interesting, at least from the Chiefs' perspective. I think to get about to the second game of preseason, they might go sign some older rusher edge piece that's kind of sitting in the stable if they don't like what they're seeing. So that's going to be something to watch.
Indeed.
Right. So I wanted to maybe just jump over because we're nearing the end of the show here. I wanted to cover off the Broncos for those who are viewing, particularly from MHRT Network. Thank you for your patience getting us to the last of the four teams from the ESPN article. But at the end of the day, I felt there was a few glaring issues with their general takes, and I'm certainly the more Tito, I did make a comment to Alex before the show.
Looked like a winner. That's what he called me.
And it was not far off from that, aside from the fact that I think he's at least 50 pounds lighter.
He doesn't have this.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good thing it's after 9.
The after hours pod.
Yes, the after hours portion. But
I have my pants on.
That's right. We didn't go full OnlyFans on that one.
Right.
But
you got to pay for the plus package. Yeah. Only $5.99 a month. Sign up now.
$5.99 a month.
You just been by me.
So I had a few issues with the way that they broke down the article. So I actually think that the Broncos did okay in the offseason when it came to our cornerbacks and whatnot, but I don't believe I would necessarily tout that as our strength. I truly think that the Broncos, as much as I personally didn't care for the Surtain pick, it's undeniable that he basically stepped into the league and looked like a seasoned veteran.
Dog. Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like it's look, I will give credit where credit's due. He looked like he was like a 5 or 6 year veteran in the league and was playing.
His dad was a pretty solid corner too. So
I
said his dad was a pretty solid corner.
Well, yeah, he was, but my point being is that I personally would have gone, say, offensive line with that particular pick at that point in that year's draft. But it's undeniable that Surtain basically stepped in and knocked it out the park.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, aside from Surtain, I think what the challenge that we have here in the Broncos is a lot of our guys are 1-year deals. In terms of, they're on short term or the back end of their deals. So I think what the challenge that we're going to have is that even if they play well this year, we're then going to have to look ahead to see, can they continue to play at that level, or are we going to have to move on? And that's a problem that as a team you have to look at holistically and say, is that really a strength, or is that a short-term gain for long-term pain? And I think that needs to be addressed, because cohesion in the secondary between the handoff between the safeties and the cornerbacks, I think, is something that is often overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Coach, you can probably speak to how important that cohesion is in the secondary to ensure that, there's almost like an unspoken rule between those two secondary positions to ensure that protections remain intact regardless of what happens.
Oh, absolutely. If you don't have any cohesion and heavy communication, you're dead. I don't care how good you are.
Right, exactly. And so that's kind of where my stance is on that. So while I understand and agree that I think that Darby and Surtain are certainly in an upper tier, I also think that you're not factoring in the loss of a guy like Callahan, who, look, guys, I don't think people quite understand just how darn good Callahan is when he's healthy. Now, the catch is when he's healthy, but when he is healthy, he is within that upper tier across the entire league in that position. And so that's a big deal. And then as you progress through the article, I actually agree with their biggest weakness rather, which is at the interior linebacker position. For whatever reason, the Broncos granted the choice of Browning moving to outside backer, and even though he was one of our best inside backers last year. And I think one of the challenges you're going to end up with that is then you're relying on depth to fill in that position. And it puts you at a disadvantage because it's always an issue when you lose a starter and you haven't backfilled it with enough depth. And I think that is a depth issue for the Broncos. And the X factor, I agree, I think is our edge rush, where a lot of people aren't necessarily giving it the credit that is due because we have an incredible amount of depth at that spot. But I also think that from a true X factor position, if I'm going to be honest, I actually think it's probably at the wide receiver position over our edge depth. And I think that's in large part because Tim Patrick has flourished despite the fact of having subpar quarterbacks around him. And even across the NFL, he's been noticed for just being that good. And it's taken a lot for someone like that to be noticed as that good when quarterbacks have struggled to throw the ball in the Denver's especially the last 2 years. So the fact that Patrick has shown out like that, I think speaks volumes for the quality of a player he is. Add on to that the fact that he's a lot faster than people give him credit for, despite the fact of being a very large player, both height and size. He has captain, and I think both captain and you, coach, have both made comments very candidly about Tim Patrick and the fact that, he is just
He's a baller.
the guy. He's the guy that you just don't want to be on the field that day.
I equate him to kind of the old man at the Y that somehow drops 30 points and gets a double-double. Incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
You wouldn't expect him to do anything.
Right.
There he is, mossing you for a touchdown.
I mean, his skill set you can't coach. I mean, we're talking his stature and his speed. Yeah, just nothing you can really do in that regard. So that's one of the things you can't coach. And the fact that he uses it well is always a nightmare for defenses. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to see what he does in the season.
Yeah, so I think that we have a blend at wide receiver as well, which I don't think ESPN in that article really touched on, where we have your Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton, which are that really odd blend of size and speed. And then you have a guy like Jalen Virgil and KJ Hamler, which are kind of the shorter, shifty, speedy guys. And then you have a guy that kind of fits into that classic slot receiver role in Jerry Jeudy. Now, Jeudy does have to step up and show out this season because I think this is a very much a prove-it year for him due to his previous seasons. So can he step up? Can he show out? Can he show that he was worth that first-round pick? Again, I think those are all fair comments. But I just think that the versatility within the wide receiver room for Denver in this particular article was not highlighted enough and was frankly undersold. I don't disagree with the fact that we have incredible depth at the edge position, but if you're going to look at what I think is a true highlight after adding a quarterback that can throw a very accurate deep ball, I would probably say it's probably the wide receiver position, just because it is a dependent position. And once you start having accurate long bombs or long throws thrown, which Russell Wilson is known for, I think that says a lot. Moving on to the depth, because I do want to be just mindful of time and I don't want to take up a ton of time. As I go down the offense, my only concern is at offensive center.
I was going to say, it didn't have your guy Glasgow in there.
I
But I wouldn't expect him to make a bold move like that, doing something like this.
Yeah, I'm just really, really struggling with where the difference is going to be in terms of what Cushenberry showed last year versus this year. And he was one of the weaker offensive lines in terms of allowing pressures against Drew Lock and any other and Teddy Bridgewater or anyone else who was back there. So I think that's a bit of a challenge. I truly think so. And I frankly see Glasgow fitting in at that position instead of Cushenberry personally, in my opinion. I also question whether or not Billy Turner is going to slot in at the right tackle position, just because I think Calvin Anderson is better suited in an outside zone blocking scheme, because he's got a blend of both size and speed. And I also think, again, with size, speed, strength, I think that Moody is another guy that you need to look out for if you're not familiar with the Denver Broncos.
Moody.
All dinosaurs feel a T-Rex. That's my name for him. He's a T-Rex.
He is a T-Rex. He's got super short arms, but the thing is that when your blocking scheme revolves around movement, the length of your arms is not as large of a factor.
Especially in outside zone stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot less of a factor as opposed to power. Where power, you need to keep the guy out. Yeah. So I think that's something as a fair critique for Moody, which is he doesn't work well in a power scheme, but I think in an outside zone scheme, I think he might start showing out.
Mm-hmm.
And
arms comes into effect more of pass rushing, pass sets. But I mean, even if you're talking right tackle, I mean,
Moody would be a guard, so he'd be either a left guard or a right guard.
Yeah, I mean, then he's either helping someone or he's got someone helping him. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
he'll be fine.
Yeah. So, and he's also the strongest offensive lineman out of anyone on the Broncos roster, and there's been more than one lineman that has made a comment just about the fact that he's a freak.
Yeah.
So I think that says a lot, and I think that'll help against some of the AFC North teams and stuff like that have larger D linemen that are playing on their teams in terms of pushing them out the way. So those are really my general comments. And then the other thing that I did want to point out, I have mentioned, I believe on previous podcasts, that I did feel that Wazirike may well fill in at the starting position on the interior of the D-line. I had a gut feeling that when we drafted him and when I saw him play in college, that he had that potential and that was likely a reason why the Broncos drafted him. I think a lot of what will play out, or a lot of what will determine whether or not what ESPN has predicted to come true or not, will be preseason. Can he show against NFL level talent in the preseason? And if the answer to that is yes, I would not be surprised if they want to take that leap of faith with him to, at minimum, rotate him in, or maybe at the outer limits, start him in a starting role with a rotational backup with a guy like Mike Purcell.
Mm-hmm.
So those are really my major comments as it pertains to everything with regards to what I saw from that depth chart in that article. I actually thought the depth chart was more accurate than not, but I think center was let's just say I wasn't overly fond of their pick, and I was pleasantly surprised with the interior D line pick, because they effectively mirrored what my own thoughts were.
And a lot of for the grand scheme of the AFC West, I mean, they ranked every. The Raiders one, I feel like they did that because they're like, well, we can't put all of them in the top 15. But I mean, they're all ranked pretty high for especially the Broncos for where they were last year. So it just kind of, even this article kind of alludes to the competitiveness that's ahead, in these divisional matchups.
I think 14 was a little high.
14
was a little high.
14 and 3.
21.
21.
Yeah, so
Anyone?
I think 14 was a little high. I also think that the Chargers.
Yeah, riding that.
I think the Chargers also. So let's put it this way: I put the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Raiders all in the same spot, which is they need to prove that they can get up into those upper tiers this season.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think ultimately that we can do it collectively as a division. But I think that if you're going to rank teams at the NFL level, that you all need to show that you can make it up into those levels. And frankly, the Broncos haven't done it in recent years. And I think that the Chargers tanked at the end of last season. The Raiders showed out at the end of last season. But ultimately speaking, what all playoff teams all combined, you're at what, 16 teams? So at worst case, you were 16th. 14?
Yeah,
14?
17 per.
Yeah, so 14. So basically, you were effectively 14th at the worst last season. So I think ranking the Raiders 21st is a bit of a slap in the face. And I think that
Typical BSPN.
Yeah, and I think ranking the Broncos at 14th, well,
Hey,
it's
they ranked
certainly,
you ahead of the Cardinals
it's certainly possible to be ranked 14th.
Steelers too.
and the Lions. Those are some tough people you beat out. So and the Giants. Dang.
You know what? Since I'm not allowed to swear,
That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
Since I'm not allowed to swear,
Let him
because
cook.
this is going on. Well, by the way, it's going on. I don't know if it's going on Roku. We'll go on Roku this weekend though on a rebroadcast. And but you know what? I can't swear, but I can say this.
What was that?
He fits it in some kind of way.
So with all of that in mind, we've had a wonderful show today, and we'd like to thank everyone for joining us today on the Wild Wild West podcast here. If you would like to follow each and every one of us on any form of social media, our handles can be found down below. In the description of the video that you are watching right now on any platform, you can find our channels on YouTube and other platforms. Go ahead and follow and like our content. We really, really do appreciate it. And if you have any comments about what you'd like to see in terms of whether it be topics or guests or any of that sort of thing, reach out via DM, via Twitter, or reach out in the comments directly below here on YouTube. We do prefer YouTube because it's nice, easy, and visible, and we like to get as much comments as we can there. And before you leave, like the video that you're watching, because YouTube has an algorithm, and we want to make sure that we do the best possible outcome at the end of the day we possibly can. And ladies and gentlemen, until next Wednesday, where the West Side is the best side, we will see you next week.